Go ahead, Helen, do it. There's one right there and then, yeah, right there and then outside. Oh, do I cancel it? No, no.
Huh?
Category in our change-based property countdown. You won't want to miss it.
I have no idea why this is happening on the television. You,
Dave, that's really over. So I'm just gonna give that a name. Roll that point, grab the marker. So it's gonna create even more of a threatening in the back of that hole. So simple, but just, I think, well, I'm gonna put a little bit of that right and figure that out. I think.
okay. Do you hear me, Neil?
I can,
Okay, and now you can see me.
yes.
Okay, all right, so I don't know what I hit on the remote control for the TV, but I must have hit something, so I'm gonna try again. Oh, there's Steven. Lenny's our fire chief. And,
Think too heavy.
all right,
The, look at this John.
so how do I? get
Mary Ann,
there?
can you put something else on? I'm getting hungry.
Do you reckon that would get around that?
I don't know what I did. But.
Is
did we
it
need up
HDMI?
there? Yes. Do you know what I did?
So do you have input on there?
Here, can I just give it to you?
Yeah. I mean,
I'm gonna give it to Andrea and Andrea. So Jeff and Steven, Andrea and Lauren were in Greenfield this morning and they asked if they could come here for the meeting, so I just decided that I would like put the meeting up on the big screen for them, but the plan was to meet on Zoom. And then Lenny is here, our fire chief, and Kristen, our police chief, should be joining us on Zoom, okay? And somehow I broke the TV. Well, I didn't break the TV part was, but Andrea is gonna fix it.
I don't know if I can fix it.
Okay.
I'm not the person for this, but
No?
I feel like.
Okay.
That's me, you guys are good.
Okay.
But there should be, is there an HDMI thing?
Oh,
Like an input?
Yeah,
There should
an
be an
input.
input.
yes. Okay.
Get on your computer.
Oh, Lauren will know what to do. Is it,
Your menu, you can go.
So like there's there's no, the home just brings you.
there's something called source. Oh, what if I go here? Don't know that that really works.
I don't know.
You know, it was just here and I just like touched it by
Okay.
accident.
Oh, so
So-
actually, it was on the TV for a second.
Yes, yeah, yes. Oh, these guys will know what to do. Maybe.
One, I know that was always the best.
Is it
book we
internet?
had.
On the
There's
side?
no way to make lasagna.
Oh, down there?
Down in the bottom. Sam's like the,
Part about lasagna is the cheesy, gooey vegetable that goes with it.
oh,
We're
wait.
gonna pick it
Nope,
up.
can see down below. There we
Oh.
go.
There we
Oh,
go.
I knew it. I knew it. Thank you. Okay, okay, yeah, okay. Oh, good, there's Kristen. Okay. She's gone. Oh, she's back. Oh, we have to approve minutes. Jeff and Stephen, I sent out minutes from the last library building committee. They were like 5 pages. There was one spelling mistake that Lauren told me about. Do you remember those minutes or not?
No.
No, we'll do them next. Okay, okay, we'll do them, okay. I'll send them again and we'll do the minutes the next time. Okay. Okay. And I'm gonna just use the recording to take minutes. It was actually really helpful. It took a long time, but I really, it was helpful for me to go through the recording. So to do that again. Let's just wait for Lauren to come back, and then I think everybody is here except for, one person from OEA. But anyway, okay. You're back. Okay.
Matt.
All right. So I have a question for Matt and Dominic first, just because it's come up a couple of times. So Matt Hussein has asked me a couple of times about the survey. If I have any updated survey, and I'm waiting for you to send me instructions to send to the surveyor to get you the additional data that you need.
Yeah, and that's on our plate to do, which we'll do this week and get you something.
Okay.
So, it sounds like you're still under snow out there. Are we going to be able to do any survey work?
Oh, yeah, now we don't have enough snow to worry about it.
Okay, all right. So we'll get a markup to you tomorrow or the next day.
Okay, alrighty, great, because it just takes a while to get them scheduled too.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good. Okay, so Lauren and Andrea are here, Shutesbury with me, and our fire chief is here. Do you want to start? And our police chief was here. Let me see if I see her. Yeah, she's here. Do you want to start with them so that they can go?
Sure.
Okay, so Kristen would like that. So Police Chief Kristen Burgess. So I call her Kristen. You can call her Chief if you want to.
Everyone, please call me Kristen, and thank you.
Good to meet you, Kristen.
Okay.
And is the fire chief with
He's
you?
here in the room with us.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, okay.
he's- Yeah,
Okay.
he's here on.
Okay.
Okay, so Lauren and Andrea and Lenny is our fire chief. We're all together here in town hall.
Okay. So, can you promote Dominic so he can share?
Yes,
Will we jump straight to a plan just as a talking
Yeah,
point? Matt?
Dominic, I would just go to the first site plan.
Okay.
You know, they're all kind of the same general approach. So from the standpoint of emergency vehicle access, they're all going to be about the same.
Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Great.
So as you both probably know, there are pretty extensive wetlands on the site. So the orange dashed line, the heavy dashed line is the 50-foot buffer for the wetlands. And we're trying to kind of thread the driveway and parking through that buffer. That we have both east and west wetlands. So we're coming in using the existing entrance from Leverett Road with a new driveway that comes straight back with single loaded parking along it. And the question, from our standpoint really was about getting fire trucks back out once they're on the site. And so wanted to get a sense from the fire chief about what the preference is. The building in this location is about 350 feet back from the road. Is that right, Dominic? Roughly?
That's right. Yep.
So, but it's a straight shot. So in some jurisdictions, the fire department has been willing to pull in and back out, but wanted to hear from you guys what your thoughts are in terms of site access.
Yeah, it seems like a long driveway to back out every time we pull in. And then obviously if we can't turn around and have to face the truck another direction, if another truck's there, that driveway does not look big enough at all. And what I just see now.
So if, in order to turn around, then we could, there are a couple of ways that we can do that. We could provide a hammerhead turnaround at the end of the drive. So you would have to do a K-turn with the truck.
How many feet is the driveway? I'm sorry for interrupting.
The full length of it,
Yes, please.
I would guess that it's about 700 feet all the way to the end.
That's also if we go with this scheme. We've got two other layouts, Matt. Should we just quickly look at those? As I don't know if
Yeah,
we
I
need
mean,
to roll that far through.
They're not going to be much shorter. Maybe they're 100 feet shorter, but it's still, they're all, you'll see them as we go through them, but they're all kind of the same. I mean, if you want to flip to the other two, we can. Just get out of full screen mode and just skip to that slide. There you go. So if backing out is not acceptable, and we totally understand that, we need to come up with a solution that works for you guys in terms of how we turn a truck around. And what we were hoping to avoid is a full turnaround, like a paved, basically roundabout that, a circle that allows you to fully, do a forward loop and exit back out with the fire truck, just because it takes up so much room and it means a lot of tree clearing to do that. So alternatively, we could do, as I said, a K-turn at the end of the drive. So you'd have to do a K-turn to get the truck out. We could also do something with reinforced turf. We've talked about as a clear area that's lawn, but it's reinforced so it could support the weight of a fire truck. The challenge there is maintaining that during the winter. So I guess we just want some feedback from you in terms of what you would like to see here. Would you guys be willing to do a K-turn at the end of the drive?
Gotta have to think about it. It does look all of a sudden. It would be nice to have a fire lane next to the library, so we pull up and have another fire truck go past and be able to turn around and then leave with a hook, and drop a hose. That would be ideal if we want to have a chance of putting it out, Yeah, it will be nice to have a turnaround at the end. And have a, fire lane separate from that. So we can actually have two trucks to be able to manage it, not just, have a narrow driveway and the next thing you know, two trucks. One truck's in the middle of the driveway with a hose out and then the next truck came to get to the sink.
So do you guys have a required width for that, or can we just base that on, whatever information we have available in terms of width? If
Yeah.
the width of a driveway is going to be typically about 24 feet. So
yeah,
you should be able to park a truck and get another truck past, but
yeah, I would like to park a truck next to the library. And be able to have another truck pass and then turn around and head out. Cause that way they can drop a hose and then head down the street for, head back to the end of the driveway or head down the street for a water supply.
so if we had let's say we had a drop off here, where anybody, patrons, whatever, could pull a car off, drop off to allow entry into the building. But that would also give a spot for a fire truck to pull over, which gives a little more room then to get, have another truck be able to get past
Yeah.
in either direction. Would that be acceptable?
Yeah, that would work for me, in my mind.
Okay.
That way you can have one truck at the scene, one truck can pull in, turn, either go to the very end of the driveway and turn around and head out. That's pretty much what I'm thinking. That's kind of what has to happen.
Okay. And then in terms of at the end of the drive, so I mean, what we've done in other jurisdiction, what I was describing is basically having a kind of hammerhead at the end. So a truck would pull in and then exit.
Hammerhead, I'm not following.
Do you see
Can
the
you
yellow?
see what I drew?
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so basically enough to turn around there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The alternative is that we're drawing, we're doing a paved turnaround that's quite large to accommodate a turning radius for a fire truck. So it just takes up a lot of space. And actually you can see here that that what I've drawn there is fully in the wetland. So it would have to be, we would have to figure out a way to do that kind of out here somehow outside of the wetland buffer.
May I interject?
Please.
Yeah.
Okay, so putting it in perspective, it's roughly 30 something yards. So we're talking just a little bit more than 2 football fields if it was a straightaway, needing to back up. I hear Lenny's concerns about, sometimes they have to piggyback each other and, one truck stays, the other one's going back and forth. So there just needs to be that the space and egress in order to be able to do that. I think 2 football fields and a straightaway to back up isn't as horrible as it is not having the space around the parking lot to have multiple trucks. And I think that's what I'm hearing from Lenny as well. So one to be put, pull up right nice and tight, and other ones to go retrieving water and things of that nature, in the event that something happens. And I love that we're debating this, because the current library as it stands right now, we have no space to do anything. So if an emergency happened. So I just wanted to put that in perspective for everybody. We're talking just a little over a couple football fields, couple run dashes, if you will. So, and then I was wondering, the first picture, if you wouldn't mind going back to that, the aerial view of the first, is that the,
Dominic, exit. Yeah, there you go.
yeah, I'm certainly not trying to speak out of turn, Lenny, but I just feel like if we're going to have one exit and entry full point, even though there would be room around it, that straightaway looks more workable than the other. And I just wondered if there wasn't a point, you know, off the road that you could not put a area for that truck to back up into and turn out. You know, could
Well,
you?
I'm just looking at a straightaway with cars parked in the parking areas. So I don't,
Right.
in that picture, I don't see any place to turn a truck around.
Yes, that's what I was saying. I completely agree. The space needs to be widened if we can. But as far as pulling trucks in and out, I like the straightaway better. And I certainly am not trying to speak out of turn. I don't operate a fire truck, nor do I want to. But I've seen what these guys can do. They're really good at what they do in driving. So I do think there needs to be more space to maneuver around in that parking structure across from the buildings.
But Matt, you could put the hammerhead at the end of this scheme too, right?
Sorry, at the end of where?
At the end of this driveway, at the edge of the woods. You could
Yeah,
put a
I mean,
hammerhead.
there are any number of ways we could do a hammerhead. If it's not a full turnaround, then we've got a fair amount of options. I mean, one example, and I think Kristen was alluding to this, you know, if you pull in this way and you know, you get your truck to here and we kind of reinforced this area of turf, that truck could back up here and exit back out.
I
don't think we're not seeing your screen.
Oh, you're not?
Not seeing your cursor at all.
Okay, that's weird. It's annotating on my end. Let me try it again. Can you see that?
Well, it's up at the upper left of the screen. It's not in the drawing.
See your cursor, but that's it.
That's Dominic's cursor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm
Dominic,
trying
what
to.
if you go?
I'm going to stop and start again, Matt, real quick.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Oh, there's Portland.
All right, Matt.
Okay, so what I was saying is if we reinforced an area of turf here, for instance, in front of the building, can you see that?
Yes.
If you pull the truck, you know, in back to here, that truck could back into this area and back out again and pull forward again.
That's exactly what I was saying, sir.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
and for that matter, a truck could pull in
Oh,
and
drawing,
park
yeah.
there.
Right, so right here. So we would park here, and then, okay, so we're gonna reinforce something here, so that you can pull in if you
So
have.
that would be the official fire lane,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah, but it would be like reinforced with grass.
and it'll be plowed and everything.
It would be plowed, it would be reinforced underneath,
Yeah.
and then you could do a K-turn and go back out.
Okay, so when a truck parks there, I would like another truck to be able to drive in and turn around at the end,
Down here,
and then be able to pull out.
okay,
And that way they can drop a hose and leave. Because we can't back out and drop a hose at the same time.
okay.
How big are the trucks?
We have two trucks, one's bigger than the other one. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but they're full-size fire trucks.
Okay, if you could send us the dimensions, the length of them, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Kristen, did you have something else? Your hand is up. You're muted right now.
Sorry about that. My hand can come down. I will work on that. There we go. Is it down?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
And standard fire trucks are anywhere between 56 to 63 feet long for standard, Lenny. I don't know the length of yours.
56.
63.
Yeah, standard are 56 to 63. And I just know that weird piece of information because I was just reading something for emergency management stuff.
But I mean, it's gonna be easy enough for casual.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. That and that again, that's standard.
Ours
Yeah,
might be-
so, knowing the sizes would help a little bit. I mean, obviously, we know generally the range that we've got to be targeting to allow for turning radius for a vehicle of that length. But I guess where I'm trying to go with this is to suggest that there might be a solution other than a full turnaround that allows us to reduce the amount of paving, reduce the amount of tree clearing, but still get us the access. So, if this space was big enough, if we could designate an area that was big enough for 2 trucks to pull in side by side, or have one, maybe this one is parked and there's room for another one to back in next to it and then pull out. It sounds like that would meet your needs. And then the question is,
On either side of the library.
I'm sorry, say again?
What about put that big green area, reinforced green area on either side of the library? Because when a hose is out on the ground, that's gonna take up the whole area of that turning area. Just because you put 2 fire trucks in, you're not gonna have like room for a hose. So if you had 2 parking spaces on either side of the library that were those reinforced areas.
Right, one on each side.
So that way
Yeah.
one truck can pull in and the next truck can pull in and then just do a K-turn and leave.
Okay.
Do we have the dimensions of the parking lot? So I'm looking for specifically width here now. So understanding that the length is, 2
Yeah.
football fields. What do we have as far as the width from parking space to pass? Does that
These
make
are-
sense?
Yeah, so the parking stalls themselves are in the range of 18 to 20 feet deep,
Standard?
9 feet wide, and the drive aisles should be about 24 feet wide.
Okay.
But so if cars are parked there, obviously you've only got 24 feet to work with. I guess the question is what is this surface that we're driving on? Because it needs to be maintained during the winter, correct? It would need to be plowed. So
Yeah,
it might need to be something other than reinforced turf if it's got to be maintained in the winter. And that we'll have to review that with our landscape architect to see what they suggest, but it's possible that we end up with something that's paved. Maybe it's permeable pavers as opposed to asphalt. We can look at other options because I think we want to avoid asphalt, especially if we're talking about doing it on both sides of the library. We don't want to have a library surrounded by asphalt. So we'll need to think about what that surface is. But it sounds like, Lenny, you're saying that you would like to get a fire truck on both sides of this building?
Well, I just kind of shot that out as an option. I just don't see if you made that area wide enough for 2 fire trucks to park side by side. In real life, that's just not gonna work to be able to turn around. For 1 truck to turn around, they're just gonna be too tight together. Unless it's really huge.
Yeah.
So I kind of just suggested if you're gonna do like a reinforced area, what about just doing on either side? And as long as it's cleared, you know, one truck can park and the other truck can go past, park and then pull back out and take off.
And then Lenny, what about if there's like a lot of room, because I'm looking back here, Matt, you can't see me, but I'm way at the end of the driveway. And like this avoids wetlands over here. And, you know, if we go up here, we're going closer to the wetlands, so down. So I'm just to the east of the end of the parking area. If there was a turnaround here, Lenny,
That would be perfect.
that would work?
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean, that really would be perfect. I mean, that
Yeah.
way there's a truck that can park and a truck can
Right.
pass it. And turn
so
around
like,
and leave.
so this could somehow be reinforced and parked and
I can just
plowable.
parallel park.
Right,
that,
we could
that's
have
fine.
one, then the truck could park back here, and then if this is plowable, that could end up being.
Yeah.
You know, overflow parking when we're not putting the fires out, right? Which,
Yeah,
we're not gonna be putting a lot of fires out of this building,
hopefully not.
okay, all right.
Mary Ann,
I just wanna make sure that-
Marianne, you might have to describe that again, because I can't really see on my screen what you're pointing at.
Yeah, because
on your
I'm
screen.
standing up like I'm at a blackboard, so it's, so you go, so you come in from the road and you drive all the way south to the very end way. And then, so there are what, 5 parking spots there? So just to the east side of it, now Dominic's moving the, thing, okay. So just to the east side, so if you take that green area and then the 2 green areas that sandwich those 5 parking spaces, and then you make on the east side of that driveway, you make a turnaround area there. So it's not within that orange line at the end. It's so whose cursor is that? That little black cursor, you know, draw a circle. A bigger one, yes, there you go, there. Is that you, Matt?
That's Dominic drawing.
Okay, that's, oh, Dominic, you're doing a nice job, lovely. That's it, right there. And that stays out of that 50-foot buffer zone. And then, and so that seems like, and it, you know, and then the road, so, you know, it could come, and it doesn't even come out as far as that access road on the side. Right, those little, that's the access road that's drawn there. So. Okay.
But doesn't this also all depend on the orientation of the building?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And that has yet to be decided.
Yeah.
So if you rotate the library and have it, you know, in that orientation that many people said last time that they liked from the road. That
Right.
might change the way that you
Yeah.
access
Right.
that
Right,
space.
yeah,
I mean, as long as one truck can park next to the library and the other truck can pull in and then turn around easily
yeah,
and leave, that's pretty much all I really
right.
kind of want.
And then, you know, it looks big in these pictures, but it's really gonna be like a big house. It's not gonna be this,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be like the elementary. school.
I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
why is the parking lot so far from the road? This is the way it's coming out?
It's because, well, because the building has.
Because the building has to be that far back from the road.
Okay, just
Yeah.
wondering. Because yeah, if the parking lot was closer to the road, I mean,
Yeah,
we could even get away with doing the work from the road like we would with the other
Right.
library,
right,
so.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it has to be that back, because that dark green area, that's like a U shape, that's all wetlands, so we have to
Okay.
avoid that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just wondering.
yeah, yeah.
So Lily, I don't know, I see that you're on, I don't know when you joined or how much of this you've been hearing, but I don't know if you have any thoughts from your perspective in terms of how we might manage some of this stuff. I mean, it sounds like there are kind of 2 options. One is providing a paved turnaround at the end of parking somewhere. You know, in this case, it would be east of the end of the parking lot, outside of the buffer. And that presumably is just going to be a paved asphalt turnaround that's, you know, of sufficient radius to accommodate a truck of, you know, 60 feet roughly. alternatively, we provide a couple of places for a truck to be able to park and or back out, doing a kind of K-turn. And so that suggests maybe a different kind of paving than, not wanting to have asphalt right next to the building where we can avoid it. I don't know if you have any thoughts or reactions to any of this. I mean, we've got to kind of go back and think about how we're going to accommodate it, but.
Yeah, I'll just apologize for not, I didn't do any renderings this time with the turnaround included, but I think that space Marianne just drew makes total sense for a turnaround. I think we showed them in our prior meeting that the turnaround just takes up a lot of space, and it just takes up a lot of precious territory that could be close to the building and could be a sort of more intimate garden space or planted space. So that was our only hesitation in including it from here on out. So I think pretty easily I could fit in a turnaround spot where she drew that circle.
Fit in this scheme too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, right. Yeah, because you drew it in the other scheme. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm just thinking about where the actual fire lane is, this one,
right,
not seeing it, yeah.
yeah. And could
So,
the fire lane be here, Lenny? I'm just gonna show Lenny, ask him, like on this one, could it be here? If this were just a little bit wider?
Yeah, we're getting kind of close to the building too.
Yeah,
Marianne, we can't see where you're pointing.
Yeah,
well, of course you can't, because, but I can show you after.
yeah,
So, yeah, okay, so now I'm gonna describe it to you. So where the, okay, so where the driveway is kind of curved from the one parking area to the other. If that could just be a little bit wider to allow the fire truck to park on the west side of it. Yes. Yeah, and that could be reinforced turf. That doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
paved. Yeah. Because the department could just push the snow. Yeah. Yeah,
As long as it's reinforced, it's gonna work in mud season.
yeah,
Fine.
yeah.
Yeah, it's snow that's the bigger question, because we'll have to keep it clear of snow, right?
Right.
So
right.
Lily, I don't know what your experience is with that. If, can you do that? Is there a way to keep clear a reinforced turf area in the winter? I mean, it
I
seems,
actually don't know, but I have a feeling Greg has a good understanding. So I'll ask him one night. We're going to talk after this meeting. So
I think in the case of what Dominic drew there as a kind of lay-by, to me, that makes more sense to do as asphalt and to use that incorporate that into whatever scheme as a drop off for the library for patrons, and then have that available for, kind of dedicated fire truck space in the event of an emergency. Chances are no cars are going to be able to park there. So it would be unlikely that there's a car there when an emergency vehicle is coming in. And then in terms of exiting, I'm wondering if maybe rather than just a loop at the end, I'm wondering if there's a way to maybe have kind of a longer drive lane that I'm trying to draw. This is not a very good drawing, but you get the general idea. That, basically you're creating a longer loop out this way, Lily, if that makes sense. And then I'm just thinking that then in the middle, we could use that landscaped area. Sorry, this is terrible. Let me try this again.
That's good. Yeah.
We could use the area between that sort of loop drive and, this area here. We could use as bioretention area potentially.
Okay. Yeah.
And rather than just a kind of circle turnaround at the end.
Yeah. the snow plows are gonna have to get in and out of here too. So Lenny, is the fire truck twice as long as one of the snow plow trucks? Or,
It's longer, I know that.
yeah, yeah, we'll measure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, Tim would be a good one to talk to, because he's gonna think about
right,
plowing it. and
Yeah.
Also, is like, how is he gonna turn around one of
Right.
the trucks?
yeah,
So.
yeah,
Yeah, well, at some point we'll want to talk to whoever, I don't know if it's your highway department or who manages plowing, to
Yeah.
understand where we're gonna have snow piled up in the winter, when they plow, where are we gonna put the snow? We don't want to put it into bioretention areas, so we're gonna have to make sure we have space dedicated for
yeah.
kind of stockpiling snow.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, we can have them come to the next meeting.
Okay, and again, in terms of fire department access, we're assuming that kind of being able to get a vehicle on one side of the building, in this case, the long side, is sufficient, and then you could, with hoses, get around to the back side. Is that a reasonable assumption? As opposed to, we aren't typically providing a way for fire vehicles to get fully around a building.
Yeah, I understand that. Most houses, we can only go right up to their driveways. That's fine.
Okay.
And again, we're talking, 6,000 square feet.
Yeah. So,
Okay, well, this is helpful. We'll incorporate this into the site plan, so we've got hopefully a solution that we can bring back to you that meets the needs that you're describing, Lenny. Kristen, from your standpoint, in terms of police and just general security, what are you concerned about, or what are you looking for as part of the design?
Okay, so I think, I've seen a little bit of the design. We definitely look for multiple egresses. I'd like to make sure that we have panic button capability. Marianne, I think that you had talked about not just one with me, possibly two. Is that correct? Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, yeah, I think there could even maybe be 3 panic buttons in the building. And,
Right, so for sure that, I'm not worried about accessing with our vehicles. We have capability of accessing, much easier than obviously the fire trucks are concerned. I have mentioned before that I believe cameras are super important in all public buildings, not inside, outside, more, especially with the, different threats that are happening out across the nation currently. So those are my big ones, that the egresses are going to be accessible. It does not necessarily by vehicle, but definitely by foot, that we have escape routes, multiple panic buttons, and I really would love exterior cameras.
Okay, and when we do cameras, typically we are providing cameras that go that record rather than a live feed. I assume that's okay with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My concern is that of damage to property, people that have, potentially entered unlawfully, being able to have Marianne access that, review it, see if there's anything that would potentially be helpful to the police department and investigatory purpose, and then provide it to us. We're not looking to have access to that per se, just by permission. So live feed is definitely not necessary.
Okay. And are we anticipating cameras inside the building as well? Marianne, is that something?
I think that people, oh, I'm sorry. I think that people, have concern about privacy and things like that, dependent upon the interior of the building and the very, most entryway, depending on how large that area is. You could always have a camera sort of interiorly facing the door, not facing the inside of the building. But again, that's not my main concern. My main concern is the exterior, potential, with the potential for people to cause damage, to it, graffiti, things like that. We want to be able to look back and try to figure out, who did that. So I'm going to leave the interior portion up to Marianne, because I think it's fine if we don't have one.
And Marianne, what's your view on interior cameras?
And so I think that people in Shutesbury prefer not to have cameras inside. If we can have adequate sight lines, people prefer not to have cameras inside the building.
Okay. And in terms of cameras outside the building, we've done it different ways in different libraries. Generally speaking, we have building mounted cameras, and they're, either 180 or 270, so they can cover a fairly wide stretch of the building. So for instance, if we had one mounted, let's say the entrance is here, and we had a camera mounted there that could look down the length of the building to the south and to the north. So it's covering kind of that long face of the building, but it's not farther back with a view towards the building, if you follow me. So, and generally speaking, we provide building mounted cameras that do that around the perimeter. We've also done pole mounted cameras in the parking lot. In some cases, that has been to supervise the parking lot and provide a little bit of security out there. That's generally where we have a larger lot. But also thinking in this case, if we did a pole mounted, we could, potentially have a pole mounted camera at one end that's capturing, this corner of the building. Maybe there's, a pole mounted camera here, wherever we have pole mounted lights, that's capturing another corner of the building. So I don't know if capturing any of the parking is important to you.
Well, if I'm looking at the layout right now, I believe that the exterior building mounted cameras might catch, certain things in the parking lot. I'm not as concerned about the parking lot. People that are coming there, for, true and positive reason are going to be careful with each other. And I believe the residents of Shutesbury are really good about, if they accidentally do something to someone else's property to come forward. I'm mostly concerned of after hours, and people there for nefarious reasons. So I don't necessarily think that the pole mounted is necessary in regards to the parking lot. Of course, I yield to Marianne on that as well. I think that the building mounted cameras would be sufficient.
Okay. Okay. You mentioned panic buttons,
Yes.
and we would generally have one at the circulation desk. Marianne, I think you said you could do multiple. Is there another location where you would want to have a panic button?
So if the circulation desk is in the middle, then maybe one in that community meeting room and maybe one at the other end of the building. So that, if you're using a panic button, it's because there's a reason to panic and to not have to run back to the circulation desk. It seems like a reasonable thing. So, if there could just be one on, in 3 locations in the building. I mean, some libraries have panic buttons on lanyards that staff carry around. I would guarantee to lose those. So what do you think, Matt?
I mean, well, generally speaking, we're trying to provide panic buttons usually where staff can access them and not the public. And so that's why they tend to be at the circ desk, because there's usually somebody at the circ desk or close enough to the circ desk in terms of staff that's, it's easily accessible. If we
Right.
were to locate them at the two ends of the building, then it's a little bit more complicated in terms of keeping them away from the public, but still easily accessed by staff.
Right.
So,
Right, so maybe in the kitchenette. And, which I'm not saying would be closed off to the public, but would be mostly a staff location. I just think maybe we could find a place to tuck one away at the other end. And if we can't, then, because we don't want people accidentally hitting it or intentionally hitting it. And again, I could just tell myself that this is not going to be that big a building, and we're talking about moving 200 feet. So maybe the one. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So, okay, we can have it just at the circ desk.
okay.
If we were to get to, I would say the conference room and the circ desk are the two most important spots. And the conference room being because when the conference room is going to be utilized for conference purpose, and you're going to have, a large number of people in there, it is an area that if, God forbid, the library is taken over by someone who wants to do harm to a number of people, that is going to be the area that they will be enclosed in. So, if we had two, those would be my spots.
Okay, I'm wondering, we're gonna have a lectern in the meeting room that is already wired to control AV. I wonder if it makes sense to incorporate a panic button into the lectern then in the meeting room.
Is the lectern going to be hardwired in, or am I going to be able to move that out of the room and throw it in the back of the closet?
It will need to be plugged in, but I think we can make it so that you can unplug it and move it. Dominic, I don't
That's right.
know if
We
you
usually-
remember.
Yeah, we usually
Norwell
incorporate
lectern.
the floor box in 3 locations. So either central
Okay.
to the room or justified left and right, and gives you the option to locate it where you want or just not even use it.
Okay.
Is the
All right.
lectern that we specified for Norwell on wheels? Do you remember?
I believe it was, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, like casters.
But if the panic button is in the lectern and the lectern is in the closet, then it's not usable, right?
That's correct.
That is true.
So maybe the kitchenette is a better choice. I don't know.
I do have one safety concern.
Or storage room.
Okay, so that is in the entrance, the main entrance to the actual building. It's hard for me to see. I apologize. I'm on my phone right now. But for the main entrance to the building, will those be double glass doors?
Yes.
Okay, then what I would like to see put in are preventative measures for someone driving through that. So maybe
Bollards.
yes.
Okay.
And those were all my points there. And that is just to prevent somebody trying to drive through the building at that point. We see that a lot now in more modern buildings.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can handle that at the edge of the parking lot or driveway, probably.
Perfect.
And if you put the panic button in the kitchen area near the entryway to the meeting room area, which is probably where anyone who would be committing harm would be stationing themselves. And so would you want it closer to where someone would be speaking or a person can get to it? Because I just feel like it could be blocked off. If it's in that area.
It's a good point. I'm also looking at this layout here, whether this could be rearranged a little bit to put the kitchen a little closer into the room as one option, and the automatic transfer switch could flip out here. The other thing I was thinking about was the AV room, but that tends to be locked just for staff access. So we'd have to consider quick access with, you know, with a key potentially. The AV closet would be another one, you know, or the storage room, the meeting room, storage room would have.
And why it couldn't be on the wall, but a little bit further up, somewhere where you could still reach it, but that it wouldn't be.
The only reason is that,
Anyone could just.
anybody could just do it, so teenagers, and really, so we're not gonna have a lot of teenager shenanigans, and we're probably not gonna have, I mean, these things are always for that thing that you can't really plan for, and that is, you know, a rare occurrence anyway, but we live in a world where things do happen.
But I do think like having as
Yeah.
a staff member, or, you know, you may not have a staff member in the room at that
Right.
time.
Right,
And so if they're the only ones who know where it is,
right,
I'm a former high school teacher, so I know I've been through a lot of training, and definitely not as much as you, Kristen, but, I just think of everything I had to think of to keep everyone as safe as possible, and the last thing I want to do is open a door and
Right.
go, like, when you're trying to get everybody out.
Right.
You know, so to save as
Right.
many lives rather than
Right.
trying to get into a room and push a button.
right.
So I would just think about that a little bit more and see, you know, when you're in that scenario, what would be the easiest
Mhm. Yeah.
way of calling.
Yeah.
Behind the screen, or, you know.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
The television.
Yeah,
if there's
yeah,
all that
yeah.
television.
yeah. And the other thing too is we could, I can call citizen security, which, that's who we're gonna use. We're gonna use citizen security, which is the company that we already use. Doesn't that make the most sense to you, Kristen? So when we've arrived on a scheme, I can send it to citizen security and see what they recommend. Too.
Can I just ask a follow-up question with regard to the security?
Yeah.
Is the systems that have been described, are there any of those systems currently in the town that we are
Yeah.
trying to duplicate software platforms or provide remote access into the system from elsewhere within the community? Or is this the first of its type in town and you're looking to establish this as a common platform moving forward?
So we already have, in more than one building. So, you know, in the current library now, we have, it's just a radio transmitter, with a button, you know, and I believe they have them, in other places, and each building has its own connection to citizen security, which then is somehow connected to the police and fire department. Probably, I don't know how they, you know, they call 911. So this wouldn't be, this is something that citizen security manages. It would just be like a radio transmitter that they would install. And I think it would just make sense to use the same company that we're already using, that we already have accounts with.
Are you asking for procurement reasons, Neil?
Yeah, more so, like, is this something we need to look at as proprietary? Or is this something that we're gonna purchase by state contract? And if by state contract, Matt needs to understand that we're providing pathway and infrastructure only.
I'll see if they're on state contract.
So I don't think that we need to reinvent necessarily what we currently have. I know we've had problems with our citizen security in the past. I know that Becky gets frustrated with them as well. But if it only makes sense that if we have them for all the other buildings in town to include the school, that we would also have them for the library. And that I don't think we're trying to necessarily reinvent the panic button. The camera situation, I know the school is looking into procuring cameras as well. Believe it or not, they don't have any currently, so we've been working on that. I'm not sure what they're planning to use or, anything in that nature. But as far as the panic alarms, as far as the building alarms, I'm going to agree with Marianne here. I think that we'll use citizens, and whatever panic system we have now, I think works fine. We just need to put it in the right spot.
And is Citizens Security a monitoring company?
It is.
So
Each
so
building.
they don't physically do the install. They're just monitoring the signal.
Oh, no,
that
they will
comes
do,
out?
I'm sorry, they will do the install, yes. They will come
Okay.
out and install the security needs.
Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
Each panel and, oh, I'm sorry, someone talking.
Mhm. No, nobody's talking, Kristen. We were listening.
Oh.
to you.
Oh, okay. So each building within the town has their own independent panels that have been installed by Citizen Security. They wire, they take care of that. I would hope that they have a much more updated panel for you, Marianne, when the new building comes up. And then they also do monitor as well.
okay.
So the security cameras and the system would be installed by them. So Neil, I'm assuming that we're just providing pathways for them, right?
Yep. We just got to get them on
Okay.
early, Matt.
Yes, no, I know. Okay,
And with them, super early.
okay.
You're painting a picture here, Kristen.
I
Yep.
have found them to be really easy to work with. So, anyway, so it's, that I feel like they took really good care of me when I needed them.
I definitely have a good relationship with them. It's the system, though, at times is frustrating. That's why I'm hoping we can get a good update for your library.
Yes, okay. Yeah, so maybe you're talking about the alarm system here at Town Hall. Yeah, so, yes.
Absolutely, yes. And then I have in the past talked to them about some updates and things like that. And the picture I'm trying to paint is they seem to be quite busy. So getting them on board right away. In fact, maybe kidnap one of them. I'll look the other way.
I was going to say, Kristen, I don't think we can do that.
Do what? I didn't hear anything. My Wi-Fi went out.
While, not to change subjects here, but while we're talking about different systems that we'll need to potentially provide for, Lenny, do you have a sense of whether or not we're going to need a BDA on this building?
I'm not sure. I have to look into it for the building inspector.
A BDA, so what's a BDA?
A bidirectional antenna. I mean, it's a pretty small building, so I don't know what your experience has been in other facilities in Shutesbury.
Yeah, I don't know, honestly.
Okay. They tend to be kind of costly, and so, knowing if it's something we can avoid or not would be helpful.
Matt, the biggest,
A lot
my experience is the biggest preventer of radio signal is the glazing products that we use in the building.
Mhm.
The more we're trying to keep cold air out with argon and other gas products in the glass is what prevents the radio signal from penetrating into the building. On a building of this size, I'd be surprised myself if we needed it, but I
Yeah.
think we have to include it and negotiate a credit if we get to the point that we can prove that it's not needed.
Yeah, I mean, generally, the fire department runs a test, once the building is there, it's, enclosed. So maybe you're right, maybe that's the way to do it. We have the fire department test their communication after the building's fully enclosed and do it as a credit. That makes sense. Okay,
So to see if your radios work, is that, okay.
yeah.
We
Yeah.
do have the new 800, am I on mute? No. We do have the new 800 hertz radio systems throughout town. They were just completely updated. All of our radio systems were updated. They seem to be a lot more permeable in a lot of buildings.
Great.
That's good to hear.
Yes, we have the absolute latest and greatest we were able to get with a grant. So I'm confident that we will be looking good with that.
Great. Okay. Any other concerns or questions that either of you have, Kristen or Lenny?
What's the capacity on the library?
Well, it depends on, are you talking about building egress for code reasons or actual occupancy?
What would be the maximum occupancy?
I mean, we think the maximum occupancy is going to be in the 100 to 150 person range. Dominic, I don't know if we've done any more.
That's exactly
digging
what
into
I'm
that.
carrying right now. Yep.
Yeah. And so when we look at building occupancy, we look at the two different ways. We look at it in terms of the way code calculates occupancy for egress, which tends to give you a number that's higher than what the actual occupant load is, but it's based on type and building area. And we have to calculate that for egress width and things like that. But for instance, figuring out for the plumbing code how many toilet fixtures we need, we use a different calculation, which is based on actual occupant load, and that's a combination of user seats, how many seats are in the library, what's the occupant count for the meeting room. We've got a 50 person, 50 seat meeting room, a certain number of staff, and we add up those numbers and get a more realistic kind of maximum occupant load at any moment, and that's what we use to determine bathroom fixtures. And that's the number that I'm saying is in the 100 to 150 range.
I have a few questions.
Yeah.
I'll fire them all off. One, what will be the standard for inside the building for sprinkler system or something of that nature? Two, is there going to be a crawl space, a basement, and what's the access to that? Also, the roof, what is the access to that? Is it a flat roof? Will it be an up and over? What is that going to look like?
So fire protection, we will have an automatic sprinkler system throughout the building. There's no municipal water, so we'll have underground water storage tanks that provide enough water capacity to feed that system for a certain duration. That means that we will have to have a fire pump to provide enough pressure for that system, and we'll have a backup generator that at a minimum provides power for the fire pump. We're also talking about potentially sizing that generator to provide full backup power for the building. If depending on how that goes and the size of the generator and cost, a kind of fallback position would be that we provide temporary power to a smaller portion of the building, like the meeting room, lobby, bathrooms, et cetera. But I think at the moment, the plan is, or the hope is, to provide temporary power for the whole building. So that's fire protection. In terms of the roof, all of the schemes that we're looking at now have a single slope roof, sloping from high at the north side to low at the south side, and that's really to provide kind of favorable orientation for solar panels. We want to ideally have enough roof area available to us to have a solar array that can generate enough power to make this a net zero energy building. And to do that, we think we need the full roof surface. So a gable roof doesn't work very well in that regard. So it'll be a single pitch roof. It will have solar panels on it though. So if somebody is up on the roof, that, you know, there are panels that they'll have to, you know, work around. Generally speaking, you allow 4 feet of clearance from the edge of the roof to the first panel all the way around. So there would be a kind of walking surface around the perimeter of that array. We don't know yet what the roofing material is going to be, but it'll be a low pitch roof. You know, I'm guessing somewhere in the order of 1.5 inches to 12 inches. So fairly, you know, it pitches, but it's a fairly low pitch. And I don't know how much time you guys have, but we do have some exterior views of the building, so you can get a sense of what the roof line looks like. I'm sorry, I forgot the third question that you had.
Basement.
Oh, basement. There is no crawl space currently planned. So these would all be slab on grade, single story building. We are, however, and we'll get into this when we get into the discussion of the plans, we are looking at considering an option that provides a small basement area for mechanical and storage. Because this is a small building, those rooms, you know, electrical room, fire pump room, water service, the emergency automatic transfer switch for the generator, those things as a relative proportion to the rest of the building are a little bit bigger here because this building is so small, but we still need to provide these rooms for all those different things. And so we were thinking if we could create a small basement area with a single stair access to it, and that would probably, it would probably have to be a stair that's accessed from outside the building, because we would want to put the fire pump room down there, which needs to be a 2-hour rated room accessible from outside the building. So we're thinking of, you know, a single stair down to a small basement that has a fire pump room, a water service room, an electric room, storage room, and automatic transfer switch. No occupant space, no staff space. So a single stair would work for egress in terms of the code, and it would reduce the overall footprint of the building. And so we're thinking that there would be potentially a cost trade-off where it's a kind of net neutral decision. That at least that's the hope. Where we would be reducing the footprint of the building, and so saving on the overall structure and roof and everything, and then putting that money towards a deeper foundation. It's, you know, it's hard to know without pricing it how that works out, but, you know, intuitively speaking, we think it might be a wash. So we want to explore it because we think there's some potential there to free up the plan a little bit. So I guess TBD. At the moment, the plans are showing slab on grade, no crawl space, but as I said, there's a potential for a small basement.
Okay, great. I'm a super huge fan of, if we can get the whole building generated, that would be great for emergency management purposes. I'm in favor of that, but thank you very much. Those were all my questions.
Great, thanks. Lenny, any other questions or comments for you?
I don't think so. I think it's fairly straightforward.
Okay.
Matt, are you still considering a, an attic space over a part of the building for mechanical? You didn't
We,
mention
we
that.
are, we are, we think that above the staff offices, the teen room, study room, some of those smaller spaces, we can create sufficient plenum space to locate mechanical equipment. Similarly, you know, we might be able to get an ERV for the meeting room located above, say, the restrooms or the storage room and kitchen, something like that. So there are a couple of areas where I think we'll be able to get decent plenum space above to hide equipment. Dominic, do you want to run through the plans as they stand today?
Yeah, will do.
I'm sorry, Dominic, if anyone, does anyone mind? I have something else I have to run into. Is it okay if I'm excused?
Yes, thank you so much, Kristen. Okay, it was really nice
Yeah.
to be here. Okay, all right.
Thank you, Kristen.
If you would send me anything in an email that you're showing after I leave, that'd be great. Marianne has my email.
Yes.
Great,
okay,
thanks,
great.
Kristen.
Okay.
Great, thanks a lot. That was really helpful, that discussion. So some of these images you've already seen. We've got 3 schemes that we wanted to review with you guys and just go over the development of them. So this is the first scheme where we orientate the building east-west on the site, and we're currently showing one option for parking. So this allows for more direct access, breaks up some of the parking stalls, and introduces option to incorporate some plantings, and therefore kind of enhance the entry experience with more plantings. The reading garden is located to the south of the building. And again, we're considering the 50-foot buffers and trying to allow the building to have some address to Leverett Road to the north. So as we go to the next slide here, we have a plan that has been revised slightly from what we've seen last week. It still has an entry porch on this side here to a vestibule and a central lobby. From
Dominic, we're
Dominic, it
still
doesn't-
seeing the site plan.
got it.
There you go.
Yeah. Something with the play, it seems to not register. You can all see that now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
So with this plan again, entry is through this overhead porch, or covered porch into a vestibule. We have a centralized lobby, which has glazing both on the north and south sides. So you have great connection to the reading garden to the south, and then the meadows to the north. From this point, you can see left down into the meeting room and have direct access to that. And then looking to the right or up the page here, you would then see circulation browsing and the other programs above. This dotted line here is just to indicate after hours access. So this would be a security screen preventing patrons from access to the rest of the library during an after hours event. So starting at the meeting room, we have a lot of the mechanical services located here, as I'm showing here with my cursor. With
Hey, Dominic.
Yeah.
I think we're not seeing it in full screen mode, and so your cursor is kind of misaligned with.
Got it.
I think
I guess
you're
I
seeing it
just
in
have
full
to
screen,
say-
but we're not.
Yeah. I think I'll just stay in this. If that's okay with everybody, is this a lot easier for everybody to see? I was able to zoom in now. Does this work, Matt?
Yeah. Yep.
Is this now? So I'm just highlighting this mechanical space here. Apologies for this. So here we have meeting storage room. We have water service fire pump, which needs exterior access or needs to be on an exterior wall. We have the electric room as well. Then the kitchen, AV rooms, and the book drop kind of create this threshold for the meeting room. We've located the public restrooms in this lobby. access to the book drop room, which needs an exterior wall, and then we have a janitor's closet. So we did follow up with our code consultant as to the requirement for restrooms. So if we had less than 100 patrons, we would not need a third restroom. But just following our discussions at the last meeting, we have included a staff/family room, or, you know, it can be considered for staff and patrons, allowing for a third restroom that we've included in all three schemes. So I just wanted to note that as I'm talking about these two gender neutral restrooms here in the lobby. Marianne, feel free to jump in as I'm presenting if you have a question.
So I think the likelihood that we would have 100 people in this building at any one time that's going to be rare. I think, so before the pandemic, we would have 30 to 40 people come through a day. And then, and I guess, programming would be happening in this building, but it would be, I think we might have 50 people in the building, on a somewhat regular basis, but to have 100 people in the building on a somewhat regular basis, I think that's not a reasonable expectation. So if we said that we were going to have 75 people, do we have to have that third restroom?
We would not. And
Okay.
we would
But
not.
but I think that would require sign off from the local official, Marianne. I think you would probably have to do something like either post maximum occupancy in the building or sign an MOU with the local, authority, basically saying that the occupant load would never exceed that capacity in order, because otherwise, if you do it based on building area, you're going to exceed, you're going to exceed 100 people very quickly. We were basing occupant load for fixture count on seating. And if you have a 50-person event and you have other people in the building, and you count up the total seats, that's generally how we estimate fixtures. I understand what you're saying, but I think it's conceivable, although you're saying it's unlikely, it's conceivable that you would have more people. So I think we would just need to get sign off from the building inspector that that's an acceptable interpretation.
Okay.
And I don't think we can base anticipated building use on the use that you have in the past.
No, but I'm just thinking, this is a town of 1,800 people. And there might be, so the Irving Library just had a day when 100 people came into the library, but they weren't all there at once. And so I think we'll have days when 100 people are there all at once, but those are going to be the rare occasion.
What's the capacity of the meeting room?
50.
It's 50.
50.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you taking account, like, if the bookcases were bolted to the floor, would that lower the occupancy? Or are you taking the occupancy with all the bookcases for the books or without it?
I think they're doing the
So-
occupancy seating.
We're doing occupancy for fixture count based on seating, so not based on area. Egress occupant calculation is going to be based on area, and that would take into account things like fixed shelving or partitions, and different areas are calculated differently in terms of the number of occupants per square foot, kind of.
Yeah, standing and seating, I think are pretty close, right? So I thought it was, I'm just wondering if you're adding up the square footage of all the bookcases to get to the 150. By the time you get bookcases in there, you're not even gonna be able to get to 75. I'm just curious on that.
You'll be
Yeah,
able
no,
to
I think if,
I'm just wondering just myself, that's
Yeah.
all. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering how you get to the 150
Right,
and to the 75, and if the bookcases were simply bolted down, that would just change that number all the way down to 75.
it's not gonna be able to get you from 100 to 75. The bookcases factor in when you calculate egress occupancy, which is gonna be a much bigger number than the 75 or 100 people that we're talking about. And that,
Okay.
because there's a way that the code requires you calculate occupant load for the purposes of an egress occupancy number. We're talking about a fixture count occupancy number, which is different. So it's not based on area, it's based on seating.
Okay.
right.
Great. So for now, Marianne, we are holding a third restroom.
Okay, and we can argue about it until you guys get sick of listening to me and you take it out.
Nice.
What, Marianne, I will say that one advantage to having it is that you've got a room that is potentially dedicated for family use rather than having, you know, kids and families sharing the bathrooms for the rest of the library. And it puts a restroom closer to the children's room also, potentially. So, you know, we can debate it further, and I think we've got to get a better handle on the number, and it probably makes sense to, at a certain point, meet with the building inspector to get their take on how we're interpreting the occupant count.
Yeah,
And is there a path in the building inspector's mind to getting to only 2 fixtures required versus 3?
okay,
We'll have to have that conversation, but irrespective of that, I think there are advantages to having that third bathroom.
yes, and you know, and so for me, the thing that's really driving my thinking is well, 2 things. One is we have to be able to pay for this building. And so anything we add drives up the price. And then the other thing is ongoing maintenance. And so bathrooms are something that I think have to be cleaned, you know, on I think public bathrooms should be cleaned every day. And so that means that 3 public bathrooms that have to be cleaned every day instead of 2 public bathrooms that have to be cleaned every day. So it's and then it's also a water issue in another part of the building. So I was you know, I'm just thinking about power outages and pipes freezing, although we're going to power the entire building. You know, and spillage happening and maintenance that way. So those are all the things I'm thinking about. I'll think of more things to think about to complain about them for the next meeting. Okay. So, and I just think that realistically, so Irving doesn't have a third bathroom, do they?
I was just trying to think.
Right.
There is a children's, there's a children's room.
There is a children's bathroom in Irving?
They
Okay,
have 2 by the.
They do have
and
2.
1 in the-
they do, okay. All righty. So anyway, we're gonna we'll leave it there because Dominic really seems to want to. But I don't know if I'm done arguing about it. Okay.
No, we're happy to continue the discussion for sure, Marianne.
Okay, yeah.
Great. So moving through the lobby and then through the main circulation path. This is organized with staff rooms to the left here, and we have teens and study to the right. The workroom director's office, the teens room and study have exterior windows, so there would be good views throughout to both the reading garden to the south and again the meadows to the north. And then as you move through, we've located the children's computer desks in this location here just to free up the square footage in the main children's room in the stack area and seating area, just to give good surveillance visibility from the circ desk, considering there'd be a lot of activity there. And then as you move past this central staff and teen study zone, you then open up into the adults to the left and children's to the right. So we've located a lot of the stacks within these two spaces. You can see left and right. The tall shelving would be in wall niches at the perimeter of the rooms, and then we have freestanding stacks within this space. We're trying to maximize collections here. Initially considering these as low stacks, so only 4 high in the freestanding zone, and then they would be maxed out as tall as they can go, 6 for adults and 5 for children's on the perimeter wall. Moving through, and then as you continue to move through, we wanted to divide the spaces between the quieter program of periodicals to the left here as part of the adults area. And then we have seating to the right of this centralized spine, which we are actually using as shelving. So this wall that you see here that I'm indicating has periodical shelving to the south, to the left, and then children's shelving to the right. So then next to this periodicals space, we then have a computer, kind of like a laptop bar, but this would house the computer stations for adults. At the children's side, oh yeah, I'm sorry.
About those computers, you've got computers in a row facing, blazing to the south. That is not going to work. You'll just have glare and you won't be able to see those screens at all.
We can relocate them if this doesn't work here.
I just want to cut that off at the path, because that's, if you want that much glazing and it's facing south, you're not going to want to be trying to look at a screen. That's
We could flip adults and children.
I was going to suggest that actually that it might be better to have the adult computers closer to circ. Also, just in terms of help, you know, for patrons, and then locate the children's computers in the children's room is probably better.
Adults have way more problems with computers than children do. I have to just say that.
Yeah.
And I.
No, so we can flip that.
Actually, put the kids' computers next to the adult computers so the kids can help the adults. So, no, you have to type in the whole address.
That works. That's great. So we can flip those around. I wanted to.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I also wanted to note that for the children's, and we can do that in the flip as well, we were looking at a kind of bench condition. So you could have a flexible kind of open space for seating, programming, and have kind of a reading bench condition here, which might be nice for this space. But we can incorporate that in the switch. So that was.
Can all children crawl under the bench and hide there, you know, like we want to do.
I think it might be nice to have storage underneath the bench, so you could have a kind of small storage boxes, or you could put collections underneath as well.
Yeah.
As a millwork piece.
I wonder if we could take the bench from the current library and bring it over there. We'll have to see if it Stephen, the next time you're in, we'll have to look at the bench and see if it could be removed. Anyway, we have a charming bench that has storage underneath, but, okay. That's just an idea. I'm gonna horrify them later with all the junk I wanna incorporate into the new library.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
So that that was the plan for option one. We've got a couple of views to support this, which if nobody else has any questions about the plan, I can move on.
Yeah.
So this is a view from Leverett Road, consistent to the views we've shown previously. Again, we're trying to locate the building as far to the east as we can to allow it to be visible from Leverett Road. You see here the entry porch condition into the vestibule, and then kind of that centralized lobby. The meeting room is to the left here. This ribbon window that you see here would be for the teens and study. And then we have, which is currently for the children's, but will be for the adults, is this large glazed condition with views to the meadows and the wetlands to the west. We've also got another view here, which we haven't got the entry drive located yet in this site, but we're taking an estimation of what the approach experience might be like. And so here we're getting a different angle of the building. You're a little closer in. And you're seeing the meeting room here with the entry porch condition. Again, similar to the previous view, a bit of a different angle. It highlights the roof angle, which we have to allow for PV, maximum exposure of photovoltaics on roof.
And the one thing to point out, the grading obviously needs to be adjusted in the model, but so right now that porch is sitting up above grade, but grade actually, that would sit right at grade.
Right.
And can you tell me the dimensions of the porch?
Currently, we are looking at 45 feet.
That way, and then what, and then how wide?
This is
it?
12 feet.
Well,
yeah.
Okay.
So one thing related to that to mention, I mentioned earlier that we are looking into the possibility of a small basement for mechanical space, and we want to price that as an option at a schematic level, probably for whatever scheme we end up pursuing. But taking this one as an example, if you were to say we were going to create a basement, that whole end of the building at the bottom of the page could go down into a basement, which would shorten the length of that porch by a bay. So what is that, 15 feet, Dominic? I don't know what those.
That's correct.
So it would shorten the length of the building. It would reduce, exterior envelope. It would reduce roofing, and potentially it would reduce the length of that porch, which I think might be an advantage. The other thing is we could maybe flip some of the AV and kitchen perhaps could flip to the back side of the meeting room so that we don't have such a deep threshold between lobby and meeting room, which I think is a little bit of a challenge in this scheme in terms of how close those two rooms are together. I know, Marianne, you're hoping to have some kind of connection between the two, and that's a little bit difficult to achieve here because of everything that's happening between the meeting room and the lobby.
Where's our outdoor covered program area?
So we don't have that in this scheme. And really the only way to create it would be to either, well, I think probably the best way, Dominic, if you can go back to the plan, the best way to do it would be to say that we kind of tab out this roof at the end so that I don't think we need such a deep overhang on the end of the building. So the roof would sort of be doing this and kind of constant slope down to here. So we would have to support that roof here and here. I think that's probably the only way that we're going to be able to do it, unless it's a separate roof structure adjacent to the building, which is another possibility. I mean, we could have that covered outdoor area as a kind of freestanding pavilion, and there would be some sort of canopy connection at the door that gives you cover, so you could get in and out under cover. If we were going to do it this way, that would allow us to do it unsprinklered, because it would not be attached to the building.
But if it's not attached to the building, it's not an eligible cost. So it has to be attached to the building if you want us to pay for it.
So couldn't.
Yeah,
the
and
porch-
that's how we have it in the other two schemes.
Right, couldn't the porch just be bigger?
The porch could be bigger.
I mean,
It
because
could
the porch
be.
is almost big enough.
Yeah, it's a tough proportion, right? So that's not great activity space.
Right.
It's fine for entry, but it's not great for
Right.
activity. And even if we were to extend, let's say the roof extended out that far, we still have the columns marching down the middle of it, which is a little bit awkward. Maybe there's another way we could look at that, though. I mean, perhaps if the roof were to sort of tab out to the north like this, and maybe the columns move with it, we have a separate line of structure and a longer span in this direction, and then the main structure is back here, if you follow me. So there would be a girder running this way to support these beams, and then a girder here picking up some longer span beams. We could look at that we have to manage this span a little bit. So there's kind of a maximum amount that we could push that out, but we could look at that if we can look at that.
Okay.
Can I just ask, is there a reason why the building has to be so long and thin? If it was,
Wetland.
oh, it's the wetland, okay, all right. I just think if it was if the proportions were a little less extreme, it might be easier to get things closer to one another, the adjacencies wouldn't be so far for some of these things.
Stephen? You're muted. Oh.
So one of the things I like about this scheme is the lobby, in the sense that the lobby within it, you can see where they have some tables and chairs. There are these spaces that occur that are nice, like somebody could have a book or something and not be back in the adult section. It could just be sitting there reading, or maybe they're waiting for somebody. And I thought that was one of the nice things about this library setup. I think you've already commented on some of the things I saw as sort of a few negatives. The meeting room, in terms of the long hallway to get into it, doesn't really connect to the lobby in terms of if there's overflow. You already talked about the covered outdoor, and where you have general storage, I assume that's also interior storage, because I think in some of the other schemes from last week, there was like a storage within the library, and then you also don't have any outdoor storage in this one. So those are my comments.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, that is correct. This general storage is, again, program that we'd like to see in this plan that we currently are not holding. Matt is highlighting a good location for the exterior storage, and I think that would relate well to the parking and access. So that's something we can roll into this scheme.
Or on the backside, maybe.
Right. And Lauren, you made a comment about, the proportions of this. We're really holding to the blue lamp structural beam restrictions for span. So that's a consideration that we tried to lock in early and allow that to dictate how these plans are laying out. I think if we were to maximize, to widen this scheme, we would then have much deeper blue lamp beams to make that span. I believe currently, sorry, Matt.
So, sorry, I was just going to say, alternatively, we could, just from a kind of diagrammatic standpoint, we could look at something that is, that this is the building. That's the kind of typical span. And then we have an area that, adjacent to that, that's a shorter span that's treated as a kind of saddlebag that maybe there's a way by doing that we can reduce the length of the building and, to Stephen's point, try to get a situation where the meeting room is closer to the lobby. It's a little bit challenging because the thing that is not related to other program is, these kinds of rooms, the water service, fire pump, electric, all the kind of support rooms. The things like, storage and kitchen and AV want to be next to the meeting room, right? And so they always kind of travel wherever the meeting room goes, they're going with it. Same thing with the bathrooms. The bathrooms always want to be next to the lobby, but also accessible to the meeting room. And so it's a little bit challenging in terms of figuring out how to get the meeting room adjacent to lobby space, because there always needs to be some accommodation of ancillary space associated with the lobby or with the meeting room that has to somehow happen. And maybe that means that we flip this, and maybe there's a way to get, restrooms to happen on this side, and all of the other stuff that, whether it's building services or it's kitchenette and storage and everything at the back of the meeting room, that would then allow the meeting room to kind of push closer to the lobby. Dominic, I mean, that's one thing we can take a look at. It makes access into all those small rooms at the back side of the meeting room a little bit of a challenge. But that's what we're struggling with a little bit in terms of trying to manage that adjacency.
And I was actually thinking more of the other end of the building. For example, if the spaces like the workroom and the team room and the study room, instead of being oriented east-west, the rectangle could be north-south, and it could shorten up that central section a little bit and make it not so far from the lobby to the children's room, for example. I think the point of the blue lamp span is a good one, and that makes the argument less compelling, but it's just one idea.
Yeah, to your point, Lauren, the circulation desk protruding into this kind of central open circulation space, we're looking at, I believe, around 10 feet here between edge of circulation desk and this study room wall. I feel like that's about as small as we want to go to, allow for a good feeling space there. But yeah, we can continue to have a look at that. I'm wondering, Matt, whether the circulation desk can kind of spill into the lobby in a certain scenario. I know we want adjacency to director office and workroom, but again, having views to adults and children's is important. It gets pushed to lobby too much.
Yeah, I mean, Lauren, I I totally appreciate where you're coming from, because I think our sense of this one is that it feels a little bit too long, right? And what's making it long, this section is making it long because the rooms are oriented in the east-west direction, the long direction, kind of, along your path of travel, right? All of these kind of side rooms, they're all kind of oriented in that long direction. I think the bigger challenge, frankly, is these 2 blocks of space that we're trying to figure out how to accommodate, and everything, just increases the overall length of the building. So that's something that we're struggling with on this one a little bit, frankly. But we'll see if we can come up with some other ideas short of the basement idea, because we'd like to figure out a way to make it work all as slab on grade also. So we'll see what we can come up with before our meeting next week. Why don't we move? I'm just mindful of time here.
Sure. Stephen, did you have a quick question as I move on? You're on mute, I'm sorry.
Sorry. When you're talking about outdoor storage, I thought, oh, what if the outdoor storage was a somewhat linear element coming perpendicular to, say, the meeting room, and then the outdoor space roof covers that, connected to the building. That outdoor storage starts to screen the reading garden from the parking area somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
Just the thought.
Are you talking about here potentially, and then a roof kind of over it like that?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I think that's a good possibility as well.
Great. So moving to the second scheme. So here we've seen this again. I will go straight to the plans, just understanding that we have the reading room, allowing for the existing condition of wetlands to kind of create this kind of a privacy condition, or at least a little more of a space making move to allow this reading garden to be surrounded by the forested condition around it. Again, we're looking to have the library peek out and address Leverett Road with parallel parking there. So here we are looking, I wanted to show you 2 schemes for this. Again, as Matt said, we're considering a basement for all 3 as that is in play, and we'd like to use this scheme to explore that. But this is scheme 2, so this is north-south or at a pivoted angle. Entry is more central to the building with a small undercovered porch. We, in this scheme, are considering outdoor storage. So that would be direct access to parking or have close proximity. Entry vestibule into the lobby. Again, glaze conditions on this plan up and down. You have the meeting room to the left. This threshold condition now we're looking at a little bit differently. And I think what's nice about this scheme is we've allowed for a better relationship between the meeting room and a spill out space. Before we go into the meeting room, we've broken up the 2 restrooms to create a more private access. You could consider potentially a drink fountain here, and then it just allows the access to these restrooms to be a little more remote from the actual lobby. It's not directly off the lobby, let's say. Then moving into the meeting room, we have electrical room, AV room to the west there. The meeting room is orientated with the display wall here to the south. And then we have a lot of the service rooms kind of taking up this zone here. We allow for direct access to an outdoor program space in this scheme, which we like a lot, under roof. Then moving again back to the lobby and continuing circulation through, passing the circulation desk. Again, similar strategies of staff zone on one side with study and teens to the other, allowing views through the building from any of these spaces. So you can see all the way through and outside. holding on to staff room. Again, children's computer station, we're considering close to the circ desk. We'll swap that around. And then as you then enter the children's and adults spaces, we were considering here, you know, the discussions of audibility or acoustics and trying to screen the programming of what's going on in children's adjacent to the adults. So we wanted to create this centralized spine of stacks that would not necessarily go all the way to the ceiling. So it could be something that goes 10 feet, 15 feet up, maybe not 15, up to 12, something like that. I believe the clear roof would be up to 18. So there wouldn't be a direct connection, but allow for screening with potential to incorporate glazed conditions, maybe if you really wanted to screen this off, something we don't have in here right now. But it's kind of a nod to the attempt to break those two programs acoustically. Again, we have stacked seating, small study carrel conditions for both programs at the exterior wall, allowing for full height glass so you can see through, you know, so you have a pattern of solid glass with shelving niches. We've got periodicals and adults computers. We'll reconsider how that lays out. We also have an exterior porch condition here, which is not shown here, but it would be nice to have exterior access here so we can reconfigure how the seating is arranged, allow for an exterior door to a secondary porch condition. That was pretty much it. Matt, is there anything else you wanted to add before I go to basement?
No, I think just show the basement version of this.
Yeah, so this is the second iteration of this, considering if a lot of those mechanical spaces were located in a basement. So as you approach with the porch, we've eliminated a lot of this program here to the left. We now have a single run stair that is accessible from the exterior. So you have an exterior door that when needed, you can have direct access down to the basement and the fire pump room, which requires that. And so that allows this version to clean up a little bit, still allowing for storage AV. We have some additional storage space here that we're still considering how this is programmed. I think the tactic with the restrooms could be further developed. You know, here we have, this is more a nod to what we had originally, but this could be revised to what we have in 2.1. And then the rest of the scheme is fairly similar. So quickly going down to the basement, then you can see here the single run stair goes down directly to the fire pump room. From there, you have access to a small central hall, water service, electrical, and automatic transfer switch rooms. One thing to note is we don't have additional storage here, which we could incorporate. So that's something we could also program for the basement condition. So then before any comments, before I move to for any of the 2.1 or 2.2, before I move to the exterior views.
My only comment is that if that partition wall between children's and adults doesn't go all the way to the ceiling, it's not going to have any effect on the acoustics, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it would be a visual barrier, but I don't think you can speak about it having any acoustical properties.
Which is what we've seen in Westwood in their team space. They have it, it's just maybe a foot or two off from the ceiling and it's so noisy. So I would do a full wall there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
With that, yeah, I don't know how.
And how wide is it?
The full building?
Yeah.
It's around 40 feet between
Okay.
columns. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so each of those reading rooms would be about 22 feet wide.
Why do you laugh?
Because he said it was about 40, and each room is 22, which gives me 44. And I know. I'm
Because
just
it's 40 column to column, but the exterior walls are a couple of feet beyond the columns. So the
Okay,
overall
good.
width of the building is about 44 feet. The
Okay,
column span is 40.
okay. All right, well, that's good. 22 sounds better to me than 20. Okay.
This was the scheme without the basement. We can move on to scheme 3 if you'd like.
I think those restrooms are much better.
Yeah.
That configuration.
And I think there, to Stephen's earlier comment, and he's totally right about the previous lobby provides kind of these little eddies of space that allow for seating, which aren't, it's harder to imagine this lobby creating that, although I think we could make some modifications to this to allow that. And I think it was a good point to bring up to make sure that we're thinking about seating opportunities in the lobby space. Certainly we're imagining that there's going to be some mobile book display units in there as well, but I think we want to think about seating in addition to that.
Oh, that looks fabulous.
So this is a view again from Leverett Road. You're seeing the sloping roof picking up on the photovoltaic array there. Where you can see here the study vestibule kind of openings within this solid. So it's a nice way of controlling light, but allowing views through, giving us the perimeter wall shelving. We've incorporated this solid wall, which divides the two programs left and right, adults and children's, which allows for kind of a porch condition and a nice interplay on this facade. You can see here the staff rooms. I think as rendered here, they are a little tall. They would come down a little bit more just to serve the staff spaces, the workroom and director's office. And then you have the lobby condition here before getting to the meeting room in the back.
Yeah, and actually to Lauren, to your comment earlier, the mechanical space would be here. So these windows would have to be lower.
Right.
But we're thinking that whole space above that kind of middle zone would be available for mechanical units.
What is that dimension on the height on the highest end? What is that dimension?
18, it's
I think
about
it's
18. Yeah,
18, okay.
underside of structure.
Much higher than that. I would love to have some, like a figure or something to do scale to this, because it's really hard to understand the scale of it.
Yep.
Yep. So this mullion that you see here would be around the top of a door condition if we were
Okay.
to have a door. So
Okay, yeah, that's a small.
it's pretty close. 3 times. Yeah. This is a view located on the entry drive or estimated entry drive condition. So again, you would really see through these, the large reading rooms, adults and children's, and that would be, activated and give a nice presence on the arrival sequence. Again, we have the roof at its tallest condition, facing Leverett Road, which I think is nice, both from views from Leverett and the experience to the building. And then, of course, the views out of these spaces to the meadows is great as well. Moving to the third option. So here, similar, it's a different take on parking, allowing for the parking to be nestled before you get to the building and then after for potential overflow parking, let's say. And you create an arrival experience or sequence directly opposite the building. The L scheme, again, giving you nice space making opportunity for the reading garden beyond. So looking at this plan, this has been revised a little from the last time you've seen it. Entry is under a smaller porch here through the vestibule and a lobby that allows access to the meeting room to the left, and then browsing circulation above or looking plan north. We have restrooms in that lobby moving through the meeting room. The east condition here is houses a lot of the mechanical services. The meeting room orientates to a display wall as shown here and allows for outdoor spill out space to outdoor programming here on the south side of this L scheme. Back to the lobby again, we've located the study in this prominent corner here, which would have a lot of glazing here that kind of anchors this corner of the building. Then moving up, we have director's office workroom close to the circulation desk. And then again, we have children's computers, which we'll reconsider. We currently have the teens room here. The children's room was located here really with the consideration of having children and families access this and not interrupting the adults' spaces. So this is where we have the adults at the end of the building that allows for children and related programming to happen before you get all the way to adults. The space is really somewhat angular. It also has a bit of a L form to it. A more lively seating nook, let's say, is nested right here, as I'm showing. Stacks kind of running as a spine, allowing for circulation to the side of it. And then you have staff of family restroom breaking up the two programs and then allowing adult stacks with periodicals and computers opposite each other here.
How tall are those children's shelving units in the spine?
So currently four high, so that would be around 4 foot tall. I think on all schemes we are considering lower freestanding and taller perimeter wall shelving. In all of these schemes, I can send you numbers after the meeting, but we find that they're a little bit low. We're not quite meeting the requirements for storage, for collection storage. So it's a consideration, especially with adults, whether we, in some conditions where you have a kind of corner condition that you could potentially raise the shelving there to 6 high.
Mm-hmm.
And you could kind of creep.
So I was just going to say, we're finding that to take the strategy of full height perimeter shelving and low shelving in the middle of the room, given the square footages of the rooms from the program, we're having a hard time accommodating the collection in that square footage. And so, we want to have probably a follow-up meeting, Marianne, with you to just talk about collections.
Yeah.
Because, there are kind of 3 things we can do. We can reduce collection, we can increase shelving height, or we can increase building area, or some kind of fine-tuned combination of those things. And so I think we need to kind of figure out what the shortfall is and how we can get there. But I think the general message is providing tall shelving at the perimeter and low stacks in the middle. At the current room square footages, we're not able to accommodate the full collection size.
Well, but as I mentioned in the previous meeting, you can reduce the amount of glazing on the perimeter and add a bay or two. I mean, you know.
We can, and I think we need to take another pass at this to see, you know, it's a balancing act, right? We want to accommodate the collection, but we also want to make sure that we're creating a building that's pleasant to be in, and you know, has great visual connections to outdoors, but also from outside in. So, but yeah, to your point, we can look at, you know, where there are opportunities to increase slightly the exterior solid wall so we can get some more high shelving, because that's really where we're going to see the biggest bang for our buck in terms of shelving is the perimeter shelving.
Right.
And I think there's still room, like, you know, at the short end of this, at the top of the page, you know, if that first window adjacent to the kind of vertical wall between computers and periodicals was solid, for instance, you know, we'd pick up, say, I don't know what that length is, 6 feet, say, of 7 high shelving, both for children and for adults. So I think there are still probably areas where we can increase shelving. So the area I'm talking about is here, you know, which doesn't dramatically change the way that this reads. And maybe, frankly, maybe we look at extending that a little further, and having the glazing be more at the corners and then front and back. So there is still a little bit of room here, I think, to increase collection size, and we'll do that. And then Marianne, maybe set up a time to talk with you about specific numbers.
Yeah, and then I can go through and look at those numbers again. You know, I can't say that we're reading less books. Or, you know,
Right.
So.
We can also look at the statistics of other towns of your size.
Well, right, well, yeah, I mean, that's what I did when I was working on the buildings program, and you know, like I don't feel like we call for an incredibly large collection, you know, but you know, that said, you know, certainly some things like, you know, DVDs and audiobooks are getting a lot less use. But those things take up less room than books do too. And then, you know, and then we're gonna sort of expand unusual items, but those will be sort of stored in the staff workroom and at the circulation desk anyway. And but I'll, you know, in the next week or so, I'll look at those collection numbers again, and then we can hash that out. And you can tell me how far off you are.
Yeah.
And it might be helpful to sort of narrow down the schemes too. Like, are all 3 of them in the same range, or is one better than the other? Or you know.
So we're finding that, I mean, the schemes are still, they're varying in terms of total square footage, and we're finding that, you know, the collection, the bigger the building is, the higher the percentage of collection that we're accommodating. So there's a kind of 1-to-1 correlation between size of building and size of collection. In other words, as the building tightens up, the collection gets a little bit smaller. So that seems to hold true for each of the 3 schemes.
Stephen.
Do you have a current square foot tallies for each of the schemes?
We do, but it's still kind of in flux, and some of it has to do with, well, I guess the basement is irrelevant because it'll still contribute to total square footage. You know, I think we're ranging from 6,000 to as high as 7,000. I think the second scheme right now overall is the biggest, but it's because everything is currently drawn a little bit bigger than it needs to be. And so you know, I don't want to focus too much on the actual numbers, because I feel like we can, in any of these, we can tighten up the number to where it needs to be. But I think we're going to be around 6,000 square feet. That's our target. I think that's about the tightest that we're going to get, is our assessment right now.
Can I ask about the basement idea?
Yeah.
So what do we do about the high water table?
I mean, we have perimeter drains around the basement, and it's well waterproofed. I think there are ways to manage that.
Okay.
I mean, we don't know yet if this is worth pursuing. We haven't been able to get into this yet with our cost estimator to get a better sense from him. We had a kind of initial communication with him, and he said that, you know, in theory, it's conceivable that it would just be a wash, that, you know, by reducing the above ground space, you know, above ground enclosure, and spending a little more money on foundations and a small basement, it's about a 1-to-1 trade-off. But you know, we haven't talked to our engineers about it yet. We haven't had a more in-depth conversation with our estimator about it. And, you know, I think we're still kind of grappling with the plan. So, you know, the reason that we were thinking about a basement is because we thought it freed up room on the main level to get spaces closer to each other without having all of these other ancillary spaces getting in the way. You know, we saw that most, I think, in that first scheme, right? It's a little bit less of a problem in the second scheme, and actually the third scheme has of the three, probably has the best relationship between lobby and meeting room, right? Because it's kind of side loaded everything else. And so maybe there's a way to manage it like in this scheme where, you know, it would certainly be a cleaner plan if we could take a lot of that back of house stuff and move it down into a basement. But we're still hopeful that we can figure out a way to manage it all as slab on grade. And that's something we're still kind of working through in all of them.
Okay.
So I had two follow-up images, Matt, and then that was it. I had the schedule. So again, from Leverett Road, central to this building form, you see the teens and study room. Sorry, the study room is in the corner here. So this is actually staff. A lot of these services here, and then you have the larger windows on the northeast. And then as you enter into the site, the actual entry into the building opens up more here with the high roof lobby condition.
Okay, and so then, so the straight rectangle is a more economical design. What is the percentage of difference of having this L-shaped building in price?
It's hard to say. You know, if you were to evaluate it just on a square foot basis, there's no difference, right? That, you know, theoretically these are all the same program, but an L-shaped building adds you know, slightly more complicated basement or sorry, foundation, right? Because it's L-shaped instead of just a a rectangle. It introduces a valley beam that, there's a little bit more kind of structural complexity. Not that that's all that complex, but it's more complex than just a straight run of structure with roof joists that are all the same. So I think those are really the premiums here. There's probably Dominic, is this a slightly narrower or shorter span?
It is,
There's
yeah.
so there's maybe a little more perimeter here. Actually, there's definitely more perimeter in this one. It's just the wings are a little bit slimmer. And so for the same square footage, we probably have more exterior envelope. So I would say those are kind of the three things that are a premium with this organization. What's nice about this one is that the building starts to shape outdoor space. I think the meeting room, lobby, outdoor program space sequence works pretty well in this one. I think the children's room is a little bit more awkward here than it is in the others, because you're moving through it to get to the other one, whereas in the previous two schemes, you're kind of moving your way through the central core, circulation, and staff spaces and teen room and everything, and then you're either going left or right into children or adults, and they're kind of parallel rather than moving through one to get to the other. So that's, I don't know what your view is about that, but to me that seems like it's less ideal.
Agreed.
So this bar, the longer bar, is not as wide as in.
That's right, yeah. So we are actually restricted if the rafters span across the long span. We are restricted by the column placement adjacent to them. This has to stay 15 feet to allow the roof decking to work. And so if you consider that 15-foot offset of columns, and you then incorporate a turn, we want the same relationship. We could break that relationship potentially to widen this scheme, but you can see here each column is 15 feet from each other. So technically between these two columns in this scheme, it's 30 feet, whereas the others it's 40. Right. And you can see the proportion there. This feels a lot more slender than the others. So these two walls could push out 10 feet, but you further complicate the structure.
Is the L-shaped building more efficient in terms of square footage?
Yes, for square footages, but shelving then, I believe, is a lot worse. And as Matt said, the children's room relationship is, we're fighting that condition.
Right.
Well, you guys really have your work cut out for you.
This is the
Who
fun
knew a
part.
small building could be such a challenge to plan.
When do we need to decide which direction to pursue?
So we have a meeting with the committee next Tuesday. And then our community meeting is a week after that on the 11th. I think what we had talked about in our last meeting was we wanted to have a sense at our next meeting before the community meeting of what our preference is internally, but present all three to the community. And we can talk at the next meeting about how we want to present them, and do we want to state a preference in the community meeting or not? But I think it would be helpful if we all sort of agreed next week what our preferred scheme was. I think that we are starting to develop some preferences on our end. I don't know if you guys have. We've heard a few comments along the way. But it would be
What's your-
helpful to know. Say again?
Philip, what's your preference?
Right now, I think my personal preference is the second scheme. For a couple of reasons. One, I like entering into the middle of the building rather than the end. So I think there's a more kind of immediate experience of the building coming from parking into the long side of the building and arriving at the lobby. That it's a shorter transition from outside to inside, and you're there in the middle, and you either go left or you go right. I think having the children and adults kind of paired at the far end works pretty well. There's not a bad connection between the meeting room and the lobby. I think we could work on improving that perhaps. Right now it's the restrooms that are kind of the one thing left between them. But it's a pretty generous opening.
Yeah, can I make a suggestion? You're gonna hate it, but I have to say it now because it's in my head. So we enter from the side that says porch. And
Yep.
we have double doors and glazing. That's the same side on both sides, you know, on the entrance and then the exit to the reading garden on the other side. And actually, I'm not gonna say it. I've already convinced myself. Don't worry, you don't have to convince me. All right, so what I was gonna say was, can we just have a single door there? And Lauren's over here poking me with a hot poker. I don't know why anybody gave her that hot poker. It was a kind of a mean thing to do. And I was gonna have the two restrooms next to each other on that back wall. But that's not gonna work. Okay.
I think that, I mean, the restrooms could be on the other side. You've got that jog at the end where the porch is, everything could slide down a little bit. I mean,
Yeah,
sure.
I think that we can look at that. I think there are ways probably to reconfigure this to get the meeting room and the lobby to be tighter together. Although I don't mind having a little bit of a threshold between them. And in this case, we're doing a sliding door so that most of the time that would be just an open condition, we're thinking. And then the times when you're going to have an event while the library is open really would be the only time that you close that sliding wall. Off hours, it could stay open. During the day when the meeting room is being used for something other than a meeting room, whether it's just additional, seating space or reading, large reading room or whatever, however that's being used. More like, Wendell, kind of when that's, I've only toured Wendell once, but my initial kind of read of that is that sliding partition stays open most of the time. And so I think this width allows for that openness, the feeling of openness between the meeting room and the rest of the library. I don't know what that dimension is, but I'm guessing that's about 12 feet.
Okay.
Something like that. Is that
Massive.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah.
Yeah, the janitor's closet is bigger than it needs to be.
For sure.
So there's some work here obviously to do, but part of the reason is we wanted to pull the doors on the far side of the lobby. First of all, when you walk in, I think it's nice that you see through the building to the landscape outside. I think that'll make for a very nice lobby. And I think it's important to, as you're exiting at that far side of the lobby, do it under the cover of the roof. And so pulling those doors in a little bit, I think is important. But we can, they could probably push another 3 or 4 feet out, to allow us to slip in another door to get a second room next to the janitor, so that we've got kind of two side-by-side rooms here that both get accessed somehow before you leave the building. I mean, there's a lot of kind of fine tuning, but so the things that I like about this, I like when you enter, you see all the way through the building. I like that you enter and you're very quickly at the lobby where you have a choice of either, kind of going here or here. And I also like the way this one looks from Leverett Road. I think it's a little more dynamic than the other. So for those reasons, this is the one that right now I'm kind of more leaning towards. So, but I'd love to hear what other people think.
I also think the spaces are better defined.
Well, and I think the adjacencies work the best in this scheme, actually. Yeah.
I like this one the best too.
I like entering in the center of the building.
Yeah.
I don't like entering in the back wall.
Yeah. So I have a question about the site plan for this one. It looked to me like you slightly changed the orientation of the building. You did, Dominic shaking his head, yes. So, and is that, can you just explain why?
It's a response to the wetlands and the buffers for sure. I think it's also about talking to Matt's comment about the address to Leverett Road and how dynamic this building is, in the sense that you pick up on two sides of the building.
Yeah.
It also responds to the grading, the slope grading, and that's another consideration, that by pivoting it a little bit, we are starting to think about cut and fill as well.
Okay.
And the grade, the access that we need to the on this side into the building. So
yeah, one thing that these site plans are still really diagrams, and the way that I would like to see this work in terms of a kind of site diagram, if this is a wooded edge here, and that wooded edge starts to define a clearing that is the reading garden, that wooded edge kind of continues out this way, so that this corner of the building, and maybe that wooded edge has to even come back a little further, but we want the reading garden to feel like a separate kind of environment than this larger, more public landscape, right? And we want the scale of them to be different, but we also want the building to be visible. We want to see this long side and we want to see this short end. And so figuring out it's really managing the kind of existing tree cover in this location that we've got to look at more closely. I do think that there's still room to move this a little further east, which would help us. Right now we're managing to keep it within the, in between the 50-foot buffers fully, which I think is a good thing. Keeping in mind that this parking area is going to get wider because we've got to accommodate, a kind of return loop. So it's going to make this overall parking lot, wider, with maybe with a bioretention area in the middle of it. I still think there's room to move that a little further east and have the building slide down further east with it, which gives us, I think, a little more flexibility in terms of our view, from Leverett and also back out from that corner of the building, kind of out to this, more public meadow. That's very difficult to draw on Zoom.
Marianne, I apologize. I've got to run. I've got a 2:30 meeting.
Okay.
I think Roger's going to stay on the call, and if there's anything you need from me, just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Nice job, Matt. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Great, thank you.
Have you done any studies looking at how the raised septic is going to impact both the view of the building from Leverett Road and also the view of the abutters? how is that gonna impact her view in that direction?
We don't know. There's the simple answer. The other thing we don't know yet is the location of septic relative to her well. You know, if the assumption is that, you know, if the well is somewhere here in front of her garage, under the driveway, we've got to provide 100 feet of separation from that well to our septic field. We also know that the grade is going this way, down, sort of downhill. And so it probably makes the most sense, frankly, for septic to orient this way. If you can see that on the screen, so that it's kind of following the natural grade. It's going to sit above natural grade, obviously. So if you were to draw a kind of exaggerated section, if this is grade, you're going to have, you know, your trenches are here, and there's lawn above it, and this is exaggerated, but you know, you have fill all above this line of natural grade. This is very exaggerated, but you know, this is all fill, so that the dimension down at this end is much shallower than the dimension at this end, right? As the grade falls away from you. This has to be level. The top of it has to be level. So it's, you know, you're putting a flat plane on top of a sloping plane. And so from that standpoint, from the neighbor, this is going to be pretty easy to manage, right? We'll berm up to that sort of plateau. And that this is going to be planted on top, whether it's lawn or it's, you know, meadow mix or it's community garden plots, whatever it is, it's going to be vegetated, the top of that septic field. We also have a lot of room here in between her property and the edge of that to have a vegetated buffer. And that same is true, you know, kind of at the corner here of the site. So as seen from Leverett Road. You know, depending on what we do on top of it, I don't know that it's going to be a bad thing to look at. The bigger challenge for us was really just one of grading. You know, it's because of the relationship of that flat thing that's so big to grade. It sits up higher than grade. And so having that next to the building is almost impossible. So we were trying to get it away from the building and get it out of the wetland buffers, which kind of led us to that location. So we need to study it more. I think as drawn here, it's probably a little too close to the neighbor's property. I think it needs to shift west, closer to the drive, probably. But I think we can fit it in there, still get the separation from the well. That's the hope anyway.
And better to have the septic there than to have the drive there,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
You know, and it also sort of creates a barrier between that incoming, that roadside traffic.
Yeah.
So.
The other thing to,
I'm just thinking that it's gonna block the view of the library coming. Kind of, if you're driving west on Leverett Road, you're not gonna see the building until you're past it. Is that?
I think that's probably true, because this is all going to be, I mean, right now, this is pretty heavily vegetated, right? There's a cluster of pretty tall trees in the middle of this loop driveway that exists now. So it's going to be comparable, although these, you can kind of see under these bigger trees now, I guess. And we'll have a denser buffer potentially between septic and the road. So yeah, from, you know, you won't get a view until you're kind of here.
Right.
Right. I don't know that that's a bad thing though.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that.
Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of the open corridor there, which is the sort of existing wooded edge. and then
Right.
kind of, here along the driveway effectively.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Any other comments about the plans or preferences from you guys?
The only thing I could, well, the two things, I'm still liking schemes 1 and 2 in terms of further development. I'm not as big a fan on 3. With scheme 2, I like that you cocked it around a little bit because it bothered me that only a small elevation of the building was facing the road. And now we have a little bit more to see when you drive by. I do like with scheme 2 entering the building in the middle. But with scheme 1, I don't really mind that long entrance porch. I think it could be used wisely. And every other issue I had, you kind of already, Matt, you already talked about those when it came to the plans.
Yeah.
So I'm satisfied with what I'm seeing.
Okay. Thank you.
I would like this to be closer to a 5,500 square foot building. Or even a 5,000 square foot building. And still have
It's
all
not
the-
going to be a 5,000 square foot building. I can
Yes,
tell you
but
that.
I'm just telling you what I want, and then you can argue with it. Okay. Because I'm the person who's baking the brownies that's gonna pay for it. So, and I really like scheme 2. I wasn't interested in scheme 3 at all until today. But I think but I like the wider scheme in scheme 2. And I really like how scheme 2 looks from the road. So I'm encouraged. But not so encouraged that I have more complaints.
I'm curious, Marianne, what it is about option 3 that you like.
I like the lobby to meeting room to outdoor program area. So that sort of those double doors that lead to the outdoor program area, that really appeals to me. And then, so if it wasn't going to be more expensive, what I'd like to see with this scheme is to make the bar with the library proper program areas wider. So you got that same effect as in scheme 2 of having the adults and the children beside each other. So it could be wider but shorter, and accomplish that same thing and then have this L-shaped bar. But if that's going to be more expensive to build, then so remember, money is always on my mind.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, so that's why I asked when I think somebody else said that this was narrower. So if it were wider and shorter, then we could have that same effect as in scheme 2 of having the adult program area on one side, the children on the other, separated by a wall possibly. And then still have this layout with the lobby, meeting room, and outdoor program area.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about the reading garden. I've spent a lot of time on Lot 032, both in just sort of traipsing around with environmental professionals, and then we did some programming there last spring and summer, and you can be sitting even much closer to the road in that meadow and really feel like you're out in a rural setting. So, so I think the reading garden in any of the locations is going to feel nestled into the environment. So I'm not, none of those, so it's not that, it's more that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but like as far as structure and stuff goes, that's all up to you. I don't know where the columns are gonna go and, how many
Yeah.
rooms
So option 3, you like, from a plan standpoint, you like the relationship of lobby to meeting room to outdoor space, would prefer the main wing to be wider like the others, so it accommodates the program in a similar way. And okay, that's clear. And option 1 for you?
Option 1 is fine, but not exciting. So option 2 is more dynamic and exciting. I like if that porch could be bigger and do double duty as entryway porch and outdoor program space. I think it's, I think you could have double doors on the side of that meeting room out to that porch. If you wanted. I'm not thrilled about the long hallway into the lobby, but maybe if I whine and complain about it enough, you'll find a way to change that. It's my only strategy, whining and complaining. So that's that. The one thing in scheme 2 that I'm going to erase is that extra little porch on the end. So I love it. So scheme 2's got that meeting room to the outdoor program area. That could be double doors going out there very easy. It's a larger opening to the lobby. And we're just going to erase that little extra porch on the end. As much as I love it and could imagine sitting out there as an old lady, we have to shave that off to save some money.
You mean the one off the children's
This
room?
one, yeah. Yeah. Mary Ann has to ruin everything. But I mean, this is pretty close. What's missing? General storage. We'll just throw stuff out. We won't buy anything. I think this is close. Yeah, I would spend the most time working on this one.
Okay. Lauren and Andrea, how about you guys from your perspective?
I agree. I think scheme 2 has, all of the schemes have pluses and minuses, but I think the second scheme has most of what we want. I think it works the best. I'm still concerned about acoustics between children and adults, but in a building of this size, I don't really think we can avoid it. We can't isolate those from one another. And I think using shelving as a sort of visual partition is a good strategy there.
Okay.
I like 2. What do you think, Andrea?
I think 2 is the best.
Okay.
If I can,
Stephen.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest problem in my mind with scheme 3 is its visual presence from the road.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think scheme 2, having the long roof pitch and the look that you get from the road, I mean, it's a very elegant looking building. And I think that you've really resolved a lot of the issues with the plan. And I think with some, as you continue to beat it to death, I think, make it even better and, get closer to 5,500 square feet. But, you know, I
Thank
realize.
you, Stephen.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mary Ann. I just think, you know, from my perspective, this is the scheme to go with and just really work on. And, you know, it provides a very nice buffer between the parking area and the area that'll be the reading garden without being an L-shaped building. And you
Yeah.
know, with the planting that's already existing and being able to see through the building as you come in back to that reading garden. I think, I mean, I can imagine people out there, you know, in cold weather, just because it'll be such an inviting space. As long as somebody shovels the snow. But I think that has a lot of positives going for it. And it's worth really looking at closely.
Great, thank you. All right, well, this has been very helpful for us. We will continue to kind of tighten all of these up to bring to the committee next week. And it sounds like we will be in a position next Tuesday to kind of make a recommendation to the committee about a preferred direction. And then we can talk at that point more about how we want to approach the community meeting. But I think as I said before, I think we had said we were going to share everything with the committee. We should talk about whether how we want to frame it, and do we want to state a preference at that committee meeting, or how how are we going to manage that process? So we can talk about that next Tuesday.
Okay, good. Excellent.
So that's all we have for today. It was a long one, so thank you guys for your patience. But I think it was helpful to have police and fire today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. We'll see you Tuesday.
All right.
And I'm gonna
Sounds
watch
good.
for an email to send to the survey folks. Hopefully.
Yes, we'll get that to you before the end of the week.
Okay, terrific.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mary Ellen? Or Mary Ann, excuse me. Can you, am I off of mute here? For the
Yeah.
11th, the decision make on whether it was, how the meeting was being held?
So in person at Shutesbury Elementary School, I think the best we're gonna be able to do is hook up the Matt's or Dominic's computer or somebody's computer to the OWL, and the public will be able to hear your presentation, but we won't be able to have the public participating remotely. But but we can broadcast it via Zoom, but maybe not have participation via Zoom. They don't have any hybrid equipment at the school, and the gym is huge. So, but we'll have a microphone set up for people to come and ask questions, so people might be able to hear that.
Yeah.
On the Zoom too. Okay. But yeah,
Alright.
Shutesbury Elementary School is 23 West Pelham Road.
I'm
And
sorry,
that's at
Marion, what
7?
time did you say?
Yeah.
It starts at 7. But I really hope everybody's there a lot earlier than that to get set up.
Okay.
But we'll go over the logistics of that at the meeting on Tuesday and see who's doing what. Okay,
Sounds
Very
good.
good. Okay,
All right.
all right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
You.
Bye.
Yep,
Bye.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.